Hey, everybody, welcome to the first ever live episode of the Main Event Comedy Podcast. I'm Gene Jackson along with Wes Sears. Wes, how you doing, buddy?
Buddy, so good to see you, man. How you been?
I, I mean, been sick as hell for about a
Yeah.
little over a week and managed to live through it and make it out the other side. And to the point that, me and you have been kicking around getting this podcast back going or starting a new one or doing something podcast related for a few weeks now. And so finally I was like, all right, there's enough talking about it. Let's just do it. Let's do it this Sunday night. And you're like, okay. And then after we've already scheduled it and I put it up on Facebook and everything, I was like, shit, is that the Super Bowl? And you're like, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not a football guy. I had no idea. But anyway, we're here. Shane Knowles may join us in a little while. Delbert Jenkins may pop in. You never know about Delbert. He might already be here and we just don't realize it. But we also have another special guest with us, and I'm going to let you introduce him, and then we're going to bring him on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this podcast, more importantly. But I'm so excited about the conversations about to have with this guy. Known this guy for a few years. Met him through my brother through a group chat. And over time, we talked about wrestling, sports, and so many things. I know he's a big wrestling guy. He's a big Roman Reigns guy. Tyler Fitzgerald.
Tyler, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Doing well. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
happy
man.
to be on.
Roman
This is
Reigns
exciting.
guy
I know
today.
the Super Bowl, like they're still in the middle of overtime, right? Or-
Yeah, they're still on overtime. I got it on right here in
Jesus.
front of me. I got it on mute.
Good Lord.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll ease into it here for people who are going to be joining us late, and but I don't want to kill too much time for the people who are watching this or listening to this after the fact, and then we're him hauling around. So just to kind of set the table here for folks, last year, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, Night 2 WrestleMania for the titles, and Roman retains. I was not a happy camper. Wes, how did you feel about that?
I mean, of course, I'm not going to be happy. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I mean, I also got it to a degree. I mean, Cody Rhodes is coming back, has a hell of a year before, that Rumble when he returns after that Hell in a Cell with Seth Rollins. And, I mean, I get it. I mean, Cody was back early. You don't want to put it on him then, necessarily. And I can see that. But, of course, you're disappointed. I mean, they feed you with the finishing the story, getting the story. This is why I'm back. This is why. Yeah, I mean, of course you're going to get upset. But at the same time, I get it. I mean, I think it was too early that first year.
I agree to some degree that about it possibly being too early. At the same time, with the way Cody's career has gone up to that point with WWE, considering his original run there and then coming back, I felt like having him, end Roman Reigns' historic title reign and winning the championship at a WrestleMania would really cement him as a top level star. Now, we're going to come back to that in a minute because it turns out it looks like he's managed to do that anyway. But in that moment, I remember telling my friends, I was watching it with Charles Anders and Scott Morgan, the Violent Gentleman. And I remember telling them, like, man, Cody's going to be the freaking Lex Luger of our generation. He's going to be the guy that gets right there and just never gets it. They're always going to leave him sitting there with his dick in his hand when it's over with a rubber chicken sitting next to him. This is going to be his legacy. But, we moved on since then. But I'm really interested because I wasn't thrilled about it, and I knew you weren't thrilled about it, but we all get it because we're wrestling nerds. But I really want to hear the perspective of someone like Tyler, who I'm sure was going into it going, yeah, they're probably going to put the damn belt on Cody. Here we go. And at the end of the night, your boy's holding up the belts. How did you feel?
To be honest with you, I was shocked. I'll be honest. I thought it seemed pretty obvious that it was going to be a Cody win. So I was pleasantly surprised. Also, though, I get it, kind of like what Wes was saying. Like, I understand, and also Cody hadn't been in WWE that long, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only one with this perspective, but bringing in this guy from AEW, and I mean that's essentially he established himself as like a mainstream guy again in AEW and on the Indies, and then bringing him in here in his first crack at Roman Reigns and his historical title reign, and nobody can beat this guy, and this guy's just going to come in here and beat him on the first try. I mean, I kind of understand why they stuck with what they did. I know it ticked a lot of people off, but I fully expect in a few months I will be disappointed when when the reign comes to an end. But at the time, it does make sense to me.
Well, I mean, I was kind of shocked to see him even put into that position given the AEW run. I
Right.
mean, there's a time that wouldn't have happened, and I think it's because that Vince was in and out of power, and Triple H had a lot of persuasion over things. Is the only reason he even got into that position, because when he showed up at the previous WrestleMania, and he goes over on Rollins, and he's getting a good reception, and I'm like, wow, because I really, he had been if you want to believe the Bruce Pritchards and people like that of the world, like nobody outside the WWE universe really is aware that anything else is going on, and they don't follow any other. So, if you believe that, then when Cody shows back up at WrestleMania, everybody's been like, the hell Stardust doing back? Like, why is this mid Carter fixing to go in there and beat Seth Rollins? But you could tell by the ovation he got, just like when Broken Matt Hardy returned. That's a bullshit narrative. Wrestling fans are wrestling fans. They don't just watch one or the other. They may watch one more than the other, but they're aware. So, I thought, well, this is going to be interesting, because do we teach him a lesson? Are we gonna rake Cody over the coals because he broke the throne on the AEW pay-per-views and seemed to be trying to stick it up Triple H's butt every chance he got? Or are we going to do the smart thing at a time when WWE really didn't have any big babyface heroes to speak of? Are we just going to run with this and, ride it till the wheels fall off? And it seemed to be they were going to be content to do that. My big issue with Roman Reigns winning mostly is just because it was getting so repetitive, so kind of like what Drew McIntyre pointed out in this recent promo. It was getting to be like Ric Flair in the '80s. It's like, none of this matters because the Horsemen are going to interfere. He's going to retain the belt. Who gives a shit? And that's how the Roman Reigns title matches were starting to get, as few and far between as they were. And I just wish they'd found a little more creative way. You banned Solo from ringside and all that, but yet he still finds a way to interfere, and the referee really doesn't acknowledge it. It just kind of happens, and we move past it. So, everybody who's a Cody fan we're waiting for this year's WrestleMania. Now, bringing current things into play here, and real quick, we don't acknowledge the comments. Our buddy Chef J Dub's comedy. What's up, man? We look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks at Atomic Johnny's and telling some jokes. So appreciate you being here tonight. Heard y'all tore it up last night in Florida. So awesome job. I was kind of shocked to see Cody get that shot at last year's WrestleMania, because by all accounts, moving through that year, it was going to be The Rock versus Roman Reigns at that WrestleMania. And then that just kind of fluttered away, and we didn't hear anything else about it. Now we come around to this year where, we've managed to keep, because my thing was when he didn't win last year, I'm like, yeah, it's too soon. But what are you going to do with Cody for the next year to keep him hot and to keep it logical for him to be going for the title again? Well, what do? They put him in a freaking feud with Brock Lesnar, and he goes over. It's like, whoa, that's strong, Beat Seth Rollins like a drum, like to the point I'm not even a Seth Rollins fan, and I was starting to feel bad for him, I was like, God dang, really? We're just sweep him and all? There's no rubber match because he ain't won one. But anyway, so I was kind of shocked how all that played out last year. So then this year, Rumble, for the first time in a long time, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to play out, because I could see Punk winning. I could see Cody winning. I could see them saying, swerve all y'all, and we'll throw somebody else in there to win. So when he won, it's like, all right, we're doing it. We're having Cody Reigns too. Now, is he going to win this year? Because I mean, now I'm starting to think we're wanting to try to break Hogan's record. Apparently, I mean, who knows? You know, we broke Honky Tonk's record with Gunther, and so are we going to try to hold out another year and let Roman break Hogan's record too? Who knows? But it looks like that's where we're headed. And then I'm still just dumbfounded every time Cody comes on. Like, man, these people love this dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't like them trying to push him off on everybody. Like, people genuinely love Cody Rhodes. I mean, do you agree with that? Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, here's the thing. I think this is what hurt Cody Rhodes in AEW. Just my opinion. Cody Rhodes fights Sammy, first match, AEW.
Yeah.
Great match. I think Cody ends up beating him. But his first main rival was Chris Jericho. And they made it a stipulation to where okay, if Cody loses against Jericho, he can never fight for the world title again.
Yeah.
Of course, Cody loses. So what's the point of Cody being there after that?
Right.
So of course, I mean, when you have Cody Rhodes in the main event, why is he in the main event? He can never be champion. And then fast forwarding, I mean, Cody's been in the business now 2 years with WWE. He's been the guy. He's done the work, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only loss he's taken is Roman.
Yeah.
As far as a pinfall.
I think he lost one of those to Brock. It got stopped or something like that.
Yeah.
It was,
mm-hmm.
because there was a Cody won, Brock won, then Cody won the last one. But I mean, it was even they broke his arm, and there was all these. It wasn't like Brock just beat him. He wrestled the match with a broken arm. And so then Brock puts him in an arm bar, and he has no choice but to give up because his arm's already broken. It's like you couldn't have made it any more lopsided to protect him if you could, if you tried. So, to their credit, they didn't just outright beat him. But they protected him. But the thing to me was the reason I was so shocked when he came in at WrestleMania, that first year. Look at the reactions he was getting in AEW. Like the AEW fans had completely turned on him. He was getting just the fans were just dumping on him everywhere they went. And so it's like, all right, well, if the company he helped create, if those fans have turned on him, these WWE fans are going to eat him alive. I assumed when he got to WWE,
Absolutely.
he would end up having to be a heel.
Yeah,
and it's been the total opposite. And I don't even know that even makes sense, honestly. But God bless him. I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, it's like a different crowd between AEW and WWE. And I also think a part of Cody's problem in AEW was that, and this might sound crazy, but I think a lot of it was Brandy being on TV so much. I think a lot of fans didn't really like her very, very much, and it kind of made their whole shtick kind of corny in a way. It was kind of like when Cody came out to break the throne, he's walking down there and Brandy hands him the sledgehammer and he goes and hits it, and then she says something. I don't know. I think that's a large part of what began to turn people against Cody, and like you said, it was almost like, what's the point? I mean, he'll come out, he'll cut these promos, he'll have these great rivalries, but at the end of the day, he can't, do anything with that. So,
and that's the problem I think with people I don't think people should have ever been made aware that Cody and the Bucks and Kenny Omega were EVPs because they booked themselves strangely to this day because of, you know what I mean? Like the Young Bucks booking was terrible for the first couple years to the point they haven't recovered, and I don't know that they ever will recover because it's like they didn't want to put themselves over because everybody knew they were in control. So then they start losing to everybody. So then beating them didn't mean anything. So then when they did start beating people, then people were like, oh, they're just winning because they're the EVPs. And, Cody, I'm sure that's why Cody took himself out of the world title picture. Because it's like, well, even if I win, everybody's just going to be like, well, he put the belt on himself. Whoop-de-doo. So, you're in a bad position when everybody knows that you're in a position of power regardless of what that power really truly is, it makes booking a chore. So I kind of understand how it kind of got off the rails there. But anyway, I guess bringing it back around to where we're at now. So I guess in their mind, I mean, we'll let Cody win the Royal Rumble, and then people love The Rock so much that if Cody is okay with stepping aside, the fans will be okay with it. And they're very lucky that they didn't screw things up with Cody and the fans, because that freaking promo where he's like, because, well, it starts with Monday night. You're watching it, he's won the Rumble. You're like, all right, here we go. We're headed to WrestleMania. He's going to wrestle Roman again. We'll see how this plays out this time. And then Seth's out there making a very, very strong case for wrestling him for that title. And you're like, why are we doing this? This doesn't feel good. It was a good promo. Probably one of the best Seth Rollins promos I've ever heard. Again, not a Seth Rollins promo guy. Excellent in the ring. Hate to hear him talk. Hate this whole stupid wardrobe deal of his, but he makes it work somehow. But and then so you're wondering where that's going, and then all of a sudden on Friday night in Birmingham, here in our backyard, Cody goes out there and he's like, confirms, like, yes, I do want to wrestle you. I do want to finish the story. I do want your title, but not at WrestleMania. And I mean, you're like, this is dumber than when you took away your title shots in AEW, dude. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, just a collective groan from the world, And I guess they just thought that Rock was just so over that everybody'd be okay with that, Like, so what did you guys think when you heard that promo and realized, like, oh, this is what we're doing?
I was there in person, and I have kind of a hot take here. So I'm a big Rock fan. I wanted Rock Roman, but I also don't like Cody. But so that's just me. But at the same time, when I had tickets to that show, I did not expect to see The Rock come back. Like you said, it seemed pretty obvious that we're getting Cody Roman at WrestleMania, and seemed like it was already done. But my hot take of this whole deal is, everyone talks about the Birmingham crowd reaction and how we, flipped out, and it just went over well in Birmingham, and it went over awful on social media. It went over awful everywhere else. They went after Birmingham. I think a part of the reason that it went over so well in Birmingham is the fact that, like, I've been to tons of Birmingham shows. We don't get names like The Rock very often. So it's like, you hear that music hit, you're gonna pop no matter what. I mean, I probably lost my voice, but it was a big show by Birmingham standards. So therefore, I think that's why the fan reaction was so different. I don't really think that necessarily was a reflection of some people pointing to, well, everyone wanted Roman and The Rock. I think it was more a reflection of this Rock's music just hit in Birmingham, and it's like you expect Rock to come back when they're in Brooklyn or Chicago or somewhere in a big market like that, not really a show in Birmingham. So I think that's why the fan reaction was like so positive on Friday, and then it was so negative online, and then so negative everywhere else. I mean, he got booed, and Rocky sucks. I never thought we would be hearing that in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. Like, in Birmingham, when you're not expecting to see the biggest star in the world, wrestling or not, suddenly walks out, you guys aren't thinking about WrestleMania booking. You're just thinking about, holy shit, that's The Rock. Like, I didn't think I would see him live in my lifetime, much less here in Birmingham, on a Friday night out here. So I totally get that reaction. It makes sense. I'd have been right there with you, because I'm a fan of The Rock, and I'm a fan of the heel Rock. I'm a fan of The Rock from 20 years ago, when the fans turned on him, against Hogan and all that. And we had the whole Hollywood Rock and the Rock concerts and all that stuff. Like, I'm psyched right now, because I'm not a fan of The Rock who shows up and makes goofy nicknames for people and leads the crowd in stupid chants where you have this side do this and this side do this. Brr. Like, that sucks. But like the guy that was there Thursday night, I'm all in for that guy. Like
That was I
the
got
prospect of the bloodline with The Rock involved, Reigns, Heyman, and The Rock all together. I mean, this thing just took a turn. I mean, this just took the best possible turn that I could imagine. Like, I was so bummed out after that SmackDown. And then, there was the backlash online. And listen, folks, and I'll get y'all's opinion on this too. But for all the smart mark people who think they get all this figured out, who swear this was the plan from the beginning, that this was all just how they were going to turn The Rock heel, bullshit. No, that was not the plan. The difference is if Vince McMahon was still in charge, Vince McMahon would have said, by God, they're going to get The Rock versus Roman and they're going to like it. And he'd have just went right on down the path he was headed. They could boo their little hearts out. They could hate it. And he wouldn't care. He would have booked it with The Rock coming out, trying his best to be a babyface every week while people booed his ass off. And then you just seen Cody and Seth would have probably had to lay down for the fourth or fifth time and drop his belt to Cody. And you got The Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania in Philadelphia getting the treatment the that Goldberg and Brock Lesnar got at WrestleMania 20. They would have booed that shit out of the building. They would have dumped all over The Rock. It would have been a nightmare. But Triple H, to his credit, is smart enough. And another thing too, and this is what I told several of my friends I was talking with, Wes and them in the group chat we've got. The Rock's not a dummy. I mean, that guy's a marketing genius. That's why they put him on the board for TKO. Is like, he wasn't going to set himself up to have to go out there and try to play baby faces to a crowd saying Rocky sucks every week and go into Philadelphia and give them a match they didn't want. He's no dummy. As soon as that reaction happened, I'm sure him and Triple H and everybody sat down, Heyman, and was like, all right, what are we doing here? Because this we can't go with this. And they realize they have a chance to put Cody up on a pedestal and get him over to Cena, Rock, Austin levels. And clearly at this point, they've decided that's what they want to do. That's why he won, another Royal Rumble. Because look at the crowd that put him with. He's only one of four people: Austin, Shawn Michaels, and Hulk Hogan. Now Cody's name's in the running with them. So I think you're never going to convince me. Nobody's going to convince me this was the plan from the beginning. Because if it was, nobody would have been dumb enough to have Cody go out and say that line in Birmingham. Yes, but not at WrestleMania. Because that could have ruined him. The fans could have been like, you freaking idiot, and completely turned on him. But fans today are smart enough to realize, like, oh, that's how they scripted this? Well, that's stupid. We don't want that, and we're going to show our ass. And then there's all these people, these fans that really wanted to see The Rock and Roman Reigns are getting mad. Oh, they shouldn't change plans because a bunch of whiny babies, bitched about it and all that. And, and they're running with what The Rock said. And obviously The Rock, what he did on McAfee's show and what he said Thursday night is a way to turn heel to play into this whole scenario that they've now created. But, I mean, do either one of y'all think for 1 minute this was originally the plan?
I don't.
I wouldn't say originally. Now, were they prepared for it? I think so. If that's okay to say. Because, think about it. If they were really wanting to push a Roman and Rock match, why is he not in the Rumble? Why don't he win the Rumble? Is the original plan, okay, so we're going to have Rock and Roman, and Seth and Cody. What's the point of Cody winning the Rumble? And then another thing as well is I think in his storytelling. So, like we talked about after the Rumble, Seth comes out and tells Cody, you need to fight me. And then what is it that Friday? He's like, I don't want to fight, I don't want to take the title from you, Roman, at Mania. I think it was like a confusion.
Here's the thing about that though.
Yeah.
The reason Cody won the Royal Rumble, so he gets Reigns, but then that also sets up Punk versus Rollins because you had a personal issue with Punk and Rollins. You could get there.
Yeah.
You didn't need the Royal Rumble to get to Punk versus Rollins. You needed the Royal Rumble for Cody to justify wrestling Roman, because otherwise, how does he justify challenging Roman? Because all Roman's got to do is be like, you ain't even been on this show. You ain't, no, we're not doing that.
I think Rock came into play after the Punk injury. I think they were scrambling and had to figure out what they were going to do with Rollins. And it felt like I think initially they felt like the big star factor of Roman versus Rock, probably, because I mean this is a match I know I've talked about for a long time, and I know it's kind of been teased here and there. I thought it probably would have made a little more sense in Hollywood, but I mean, I don't think that they thought that the fan reaction would be as negative as it is because it's The Rock. I mean, everybody loved The Rock back in the day. I assume they assumed that it would still be that way, but it wasn't. But I don't think that they even, honestly, I don't think they even try to bring back The Rock if Punk doesn't get injured.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know that
I
either.
think they would have. I think they would have brought him back in some form, but I don't
Yeah.
think.
Not in this picture here. I don't
No.
think not in the title picture, not in the main event. Necessarily at this time. I think he was coming back eventually, and I still think eventually we're going to get that Roman and Rock match that everybody wants. And by then, I think they'll probably have done enough to where fan reaction for The Rock might change at that point, to where people will give them the cheers that they want them to, unless they go the route of like turning Roman into a face, which could happen as well. I mean,
I
the
could
bloodlines
definitely
could
see
follow
that
The
happen.
Rock.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen because there's a big majority of the audience that want to cheer Roman, and I think that's why they've booked him the way they have, is just trying to make him as disreputable as possible. Like, how can you cheer him? Look how he's winning the matches and all that. But people want to get behind him. But at the same time, I mean, I know this ain't the original plan, but I think it's a best case scenario. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll figure out more as this week's Raw and SmackDown transpire. As far as like, are we looking at a tag match at Elimination Chamber? Maybe Seth and Cody against The Rock and Roman. You know, to kind of play that out a little bit before WrestleMania gets here. Um, I still think there's a slim chance that you might could even end up with a three-way Rock. Uh, if you had some more friction between The Rock and Roman out of this tag match, if that's what they do, you could have a three-way at WrestleMania with The Rock, Roman, and Cody. I don't love that idea, but it's something. It's a possibility. All right, so right now let's bring in another member of Main Event Comedy. Let him weigh on this. Kind of let him know where we're at. Shane Knowles, welcome to the party.
Hey, thanks for arriving fashionably late, right?
Hey, if you can't get here on time, get here when you can, is what I always say. So, but no, we know you're
I
out
mean,
there.
there was this little athletic game that apparently became this big ordeal that just kept going and going and going, which means people apparently get hungrier and hungrier.
Yeah, I heard the Taylor Swift concert ran over, and they had to keep you guys over there. So we appreciate you doing your part. But so this is Tyler. This is a friend of Wes's. He's joining us here. He's
How you
a
doing?
wrestling fan. More
Pretty good.
specifically, he is a Roman Reigns fan, and he was just telling us how Cody Rhodes sucks, and that if he had his way, that he'd go back to AEW, and we would have Rock and Roman Reigns like everybody wants at WrestleMania. And so he was pretty much putting me and Wes in our place. So we was going to let you weigh in on that.
Gotcha.
But we've kind of laid the groundwork from last year's WrestleMania up to where we're at now. And we talked about the promo from SmackDown. Tyler was in Birmingham. He was at SmackDown, and he was talking about how the huge positive reaction The Rock got in Birmingham. And as we all can understand, Birmingham hasn't seen The Rock in 20 years. Like, nobody was expecting to see The Rock. So obviously, when his music hits and he comes out in Birmingham, we're not thinking WrestleMania plans are getting screwed up. We're just like, holy crap, The Rock's here. And, and rightfully so, everybody was thrilled. And so now we're getting towards kind of talking about the pivot that was made on Thursday. Now, do you agree? We were just discussing, I am vehemently adamant that this was not the original plan, that we are completely changing course now. Tyler agrees with that. Wes thinks that maybe there's a chance that they were, not that this was the plan, but that they were expecting it and prepared for it to go this way if they needed to. I don't know how I feel about that thought. What is your thoughts on that, Shane?
Well, I think that when The Rock came out against Jinder Mahal way back on that first Raw, I say way back with everything that's happened, it felt like a
Yeah.
long time ago, the 1st of January, and then made that little line about head of the table. That's the only part where I'll give them that maybe they knew something in the works this way. But everything after that, from Cody winning the Rumble, pointing to Roman and Heyman up in the box when he had the opportunity to point to Rollins up in his suite and didn't do it. Um, Coming out on Raw, I thought that promo from Rollins to Cody, as hard as he tried, it still didn't get over. I mean, it was a valiant effort to try to make that belt the whole working man's title with Reigns not being there. I truly think that with the Vince McMahon new allegations or more expounded upon sickness that we've seen of perversion from him, they were looking for a way to brush that out and get some headlines back on the product. And wouldn't you know it, Dwayne Johnson just happens to get on the board of TKO with the rights to use the Rock name outside of WWE. I truly believe that they thought The Rock just coming in would cause that to happen. And much like the live crowd in Birmingham, babies are thrown in the air, and oh, The Rock's back, and everybody's happy because it's The Rock. Well, I say this. I think they've done a beautiful job pivoting. I had so many people message me after that calling BS and hashtag we want Cody. And I said, I will give them Monday and Friday of this week to listen to people and see, because I think we would all be in agreement. If Vince McMahon were still in charge, we'd be getting Roman and Rock at WrestleMania, and be damned, that's just what you're going to have, and that's what you're going to like, and that's what it's going to be. But I do give them credit for pivoting, and I give Dwayne credit because he doesn't have to be a heel. He is a multi-made man. So to switch, and here's why I say the blip in their story. At SmackDown in Birmingham, for Cody to say, oh, I've consulted with friends and family and legends, I've seeked out counsel, and one that knows you really well is here tonight. And he hands it off to The Rock. The one blip in the story that hopefully people won't remember years from now to me, because we're all lost in what's going on, is when he comes out at the press conference and says, this is bullshit, I want Roman. Well, that right there was your little VHS rewind of, okay, you can kind of see the splice there of where we reverse course. But for me, with Rock coming in, for those that don't understand why he's getting booed before he went heel on the Pat McAfee show and later on at that press conference, compare it to, I know we talk about Cody the story, you're watching a movie for 2 years. And right in the final act near the climax, we start showing you a different movie without giving you the ending to what you wanted to see. Or if you're reading a novel, say like a big mystery novel from Agatha Christie, and they're about to reveal who the killer is, and right when we do that, oh, we introduce a new character. By the way, I think that's where people and it's a testament to the work that WWE has done with Cody Rhodes and what Cody Rhodes has done himself, that people were that upset at The Rock being inserted where we thought he was going to be. Because I mean, honestly, if this were The Miz, if this were R-Truth, there would not be the vociferous uprise of this is BS, Cody. So I don't know if they were truly prepared. I know that they had to think there would probably be some blowback, but because it's The Rock, I don't think they were prepared for as much. But kudos for the job they're doing going forward.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you don't mind me saying, I mean, they've been building Cody Rhodes for 2 years. And the biggest thing is finish the story. You have Survivor Series. Okay, Randy Orton comes back. That's fantastic. RKO. CM Punk's music hits. Everybody goes crazy. And then you're thinking, okay, is it going to be CM Punk? Is it going to be Cody Rhodes? And they're building. Cody Rhodes' name is still in that picture. You know what I mean? Wins the Rumble 2 years in a row. And then The Rock just shows up. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think what's going to happen, and I think it might go two ways, is you're going to have Dwayne be a heel with Roman, and it's either going to be Dwayne betrays Roman in a way of either him losing the title or necessarily just betraying him, or they're about to go Roman Reigns like Jey Uso, and he betrays The Rock.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only two ways I think they go with it.
Do you think they could have alleviated a lot of the blowback if Dwayne Johnson had just entered the Rumble somewhere 25 through 30 and won the thing?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll beat this drum until the bitter end. The biggest misstep they made was having Cody say, but not at WrestleMania. I've been talking to this guy. I mean, finish the story, finish the story. His whole life has been finish this story, but he's all of a sudden he's going to be okay to, aside from his Rumble win, step aside for the freaking Rock. That made him look like a complete freaking putz. It made him like a dumbass. And so I understand why they had him, he come in, that's the thing, and he was, like he said, this is bullshit. And then he said, I've talked to some other people since then, but that to me is where Cody could have lost a whole bunch of the fans, because all these people who have been behind him and want to see him finish story hear him say, but not at WrestleMania. And, they all had to be like, what the hell are you talking about? Those people who were so passionately beside him and against The Rock could have very easily turned on him and go, well, okay, dumbass, sit over there with your Royal Rumble win and we'll cheer for The Rock while he wrestles, Roman Reigns. Like, that to me is the biggest misstep, and I think that's what really made the fans react so harshly. If it would have been like, you know what, I'm going to let you and Rock on night one figure out who the head of the table is, but on night two, I want the championship. And then let Roman beat The Rock on night one, and then let Cody beat Reigns on night two, and he's essentially beat both of them. Because if The Rock beats Reigns, even if it's non-title, if he was to beat Reigns before Cody wrestling for the title, that negates Cody's championship and negates his win. It doesn't mean as much if somebody else beats him first. So I don't know, but all I can say is I've never seen WWE right the course as quickly as they did with this and actually pivot to something that in my mind is 100% better than where it appeared that we were headed 3 days earlier.
And we're still 3 days. We're still 3 days shy of 2 months till WrestleMania, so there's a lot more story to tell.
Exactly, and I think based off the Punk injury at the Royal Rumble, that Monday night promo from Rollins really only served the purpose of, let's go out there and see if pivoting to Cody and Seth is even an option. Let's see if people will bite on that at all. Rollins went out there, gave the promo of his life as far as I'm concerned, made the strongest case he could have possibly made for that match, and folks are still like, no, we've seen that a half a dozen times. You've beat Seth every time. We don't care about that. We want to see Roman. So that had already been taken off the plate. But I feel like we got to be heading to like a tag match at Elimination Chamber or something, because the way that Seth bolted into The Rock's face right after he slapped Cody, I mean, Seth was so right in their face, man. Yeah. So you're building a united front with those two for something. There's got to be something coming up, in a tag match of some sort. I was telling them before you come on, Shane, that the idea of The Rock as part of the bloodline out there with Heyman and Reigns and all of them collectively, you could pull this story out another year as far as playing out the whole bloodline aspect. They can move past Cody and have their own little deal for however long they want to, but it don't need to be for the title. The Rock does not need that title. It was a slap in the face when he took it off of Punk to carry it to WrestleMania, to Cena, like you said in a chat recently. What was that, 10 years ago, whatever it was.
10 years ago. I didn't like it then, and now we're 10 years later with him in his 50s.
Yeah, for him to swoop it in his 50s, just steroid jacked out of his mind. And I can't imagine any match he's going to be in. It's going to be great. We're going to be lucky if he don't pull a Triple H and tear every bone he has. I mean, every muscle he has off the bone 2 spots into the match, because he was blown up, beating up Jinder Mahal like he had just had an Iron Man match.
Hey, Tyler, I want to ask you this. So you said, you were at SmackDown in Birmingham, and it was such a loud, vociferous reaction, for the Rock and Reigns stare down. What went on after the cameras quit rolling between Rock and Reigns? And did you hear anything of like confusion or anger as you were leaving the BJCC that night when realization set in?
Yeah, so once the cameras went off, Rock got a mic and pretty much just said, if you want to, he learned tonight that if you want to create something magical, you come to the Magic City. Got the city name in there. We got the pop. We started cheering, but no, I mean there was legitimately. I promise I'm not just being a rock mark, but there was no negative reaction whatsoever from anybody that I was around. I mean, it started out into a Rocky chant. Um, and then he ended it with like finally the Rock has come back. Or no, he did the if you smell, and then just threw the mic down and left, and everybody was happy. And then they just went straight into the dark matches. So I mean, I had like two people behind me who weren't exactly super thrilled, but I mean I mean those were definitely in the large minority of people in Birmingham, because everybody was buzzing. And this is why I thought that it might be, not a bad idea. And why I defended the match a little bit is my wife went with me. My wife has no interest in professional wrestling, but my wife has never. She's been to several wrestling shows with me and has never once pulled out her phone to take a picture, video, or anything. But when The Rock came out, I mean, she was more of a mark than I was. So, I mean, I'm thinking, it's WrestleMania. There's going to be a lot of people that tune in just to see The Rock, or that they just don't have they don't watch it every week. They don't keep up with it, but they know The Rock's wrestling, so they'll tune in for that. So I could see it from that perspective and why they wanted to at least try that.
Yeah, I mean, we get caught up in the wrestling fan mindset of this and forget to take a step back. Like, it's WrestleMania; they're looking to draw as many mainstream, non-wrestling fans in, hoping that I tune in to see The Rock. But boy, that Rollins guy, that match was kind of cool, or that Kevin Owens fought that Logan Paul kid, and that was kind of crazy, or whatever. And that's usually the hope for things like that. And when you can have a guy like The Rock, it's not like you're trying to have Brad Pitt have a wrestling match and he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, when you got a guy who like The Rock, who happens to be the biggest star in the world, but also happens to be a legendary wrestler to boot, it's a win-win for sure. So I get the theory behind it, but also get that over the years, WWE specifically has been way too quick to shit on what the fans want in the name of, hey, let's please and get in all these people who don't really give a crap about wrestling. And yeah, they may tune in for WrestleMania, and I get that when there was a $60 price tag on it and you stood to make a lot of money that day. And if they don't come back tomorrow and they don't watch Raw, we don't give a crap. But that's not necessarily a thing now. WrestleMania is going to sell out anyway, and people are going to watch it for whatever on Peacock for $8, $12, whatever it is. So all that's kind of changed. So something else I want to ask you guys about. We'll kind of move past the Cody Rock Roman thing until we'll see where we land next week after everything plays out on Raw and SmackDown. Because who knows, we may be looking at a completely different playing field by this time next week. They may have another curveball to throw at us. John Cena may enter the picture. Hulk Hogan may have that last match he keeps threatening to have. But so we've seen it, time and time again in the past where people do things and they got to be kind of whitewashed. From, speaking of Hulk Hogan, Hulk Hogan had to be kind of wiped out of WWE history a little bit there for a little while. And of course, Benoit, things like that. How realistic is it that Vince McMahon can be erased from WWE history? I mean, they've taken down his page on the website. They're trying to weed out all mentions of him, and I don't think you can kill enough footage off of Peacock to erase him. But at the same time, just trying to completely keep the name McMahon off of TV and not acknowledge anything about him, is that feasible? Is that where we're at? Do we need to wait till he's convicted? Do we really need to go that hard this soon?
I mean, is it just me, or is Brock Lesnar getting like worse treatment than Vince is?
He's getting whitewashed pretty quick too. I mean, they've pulled him out of the openings. They took him off the cover of the video game. So yeah, I think he's going to be right there alongside Vince. But it's still in in the history of the company, it's still easier to pull Brock out of it if you're going to do that than it is to take Vince McMahon out of the picture. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you anything you talk about, Vince McMahon is rooted in that in the WWE right up till a couple of months ago. So, I mean, Brock, it would take some work to ignore what Brock has done, but it's a hell of a lot easier than to ignore what Vince has done. But I mean, and I could see if he gets convicted and all this comes crashing down and it's real, but like for right now, it seems like we're maybe jumping the gun to start just. It certainly seems like the admission to guilt, which WWE didn't care about because he's out of their company now. But I don't know. It just seems like we're jumping the gun. What do you guys think about that?
For Vince, I mean, the allegations are pretty bad. I don't know that they're, and also, I mean, I'm not going back to The Rock. I'm just going to throw this one little thing out there. I also think The Rock thing was kind of brought back a little bit to try and deflect a little bit from the backlash of Vince and Brock. But going back to the original point about deleting Vince, I think it's doable. I mean, there's no longer McMahon's outside of Triple H who is associated with them, but like we don't really see like Triple H associated with them. So they're not like, it's not like they've been on TV very often. As far as like Peacock and the network or whatever goes, I mean, we still have Chris Benoit, showing up on pay-per-views on there.
Yeah.
They don't really go back to try and like edit any footage or delete him out of there. If they tried to do that, that would be a different undertaking because I mean, Vince is like a large part of the Attitude Era. I mean, you'd have to edit every episode of Raw, the '90s, and all of that, So yeah. Vince was a big part of that there. But I think modern history, I mean, I think it's totally doable. Like I said, Vince would show up every once in a blue moon, but he hasn't really had a prominent role on TV in a while. So, I mean, people are always gonna like think of WWE and think of Vince, but I think the new age fan, I don't really think that they're gonna really think of Vince much.
Well, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead,
to try to rewrite, I mean, to Tyler's point, the newer fan that maybe saw Vince sporadically since about 2013, a little over, 10 years. But if you're going to rewrite it, if you're going to try to erase them, good luck with all the house shows and the TV tapings, from the late 70s to the 80s, the entire golden era, the WrestleManias, Raw, Primetime Wrestling, TNT, Saturday Night's Main Event. And if you're most proud of the Attitude Era, with making the stars of Austin and Rock, Vince McMahon was pretty much right in the middle of all of that. So how do you address the golden era, so much with Hogan, Andre, and Savage into the Attitude Era? But really and truly, yeah, like he's saying, 2013, that's a long time. If you were 10 when Vince started appearing sporadically, you're 20 now. If you were 20, you were 30. So I think really it's for the people kind of like, myself, an old ass at 44, about to be 45, that, I'm not saying other people don't, but I'm saying just Vince, the large portion of him was pre-2013 where he had his hand in everything, being the announcer on the weekly shows, the special events, the pay-per-views, as far as his part in ring, running the McMahon, family, the corporation, all that stuff. But I really wouldn't try to remove him because it isn't so much like Benoit where there's a small portion, or Jesse Ventura taking his commentary, off of the first 6 WrestleManias and Saturday Night's Main Event. You're going to have to go through almost 4 decades of stuff. And who wants that job?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just thinking like if you was to decide, well, hey, let's bring Steve Austin back for one of the nights of WrestleMania. How do you talk about Steve Austin without mentioning Vince McMahon? I mean, even when they brought him back, yeah, he had a match with Kevin Owens, but night 2, his whole shtick was, around Vince McMahon, and that's a huge part of his history. That's how he got, I mean, yeah, the Bret Hart thing was a big deal too, but I'm just saying, being against the boss and all that stuff. But I feel like, based on the allegations we've heard so far, and based on what appears to be the fact that she may have gotten maybe the lowest payout on one of these, one of these, what are they called? What are these
NDAs?
NDAs. I feel like you know, we ain't heard the worst of it. These ones that were getting $12 and $14 million NDAs probably have got way worse stories to tell, and it's already some of the former divas are starting to, make a little bit of a rumble here and there. So my thing is going to be how much shrapnel is going to be caught from people who are directly associated with Vince McMahon, like Tyler said, Triple H, who's part of his family, like it or not, Bruce Pritchard. I mean, even if Bruce didn't have knowledge of it, he's still so deep in the McMahon inner circle. I don't feel like they're going to let him stick around. I hope they do, but I mean, I doubt it. I mean, I think he's one of these people, and I think that's why you started. I mean, I think that's why Kevin Dunn just abruptly left over the weekend here a while back. I think people started getting wind that the shit was going to hit the fan and started, getting the heck out of there. And I hope to God Triple H doesn't get caught up in that, because to me, Triple H has done more positive stuff for WWE in the last 5 years than perhaps anyone else that you can, point a finger at that you're at least aware of. And I think he has a lot to do with why this recent situation we've spent most of the show talking about helped, pivot to what it did. Like I say, I have no doubt The Rock had a big hand in that, of help, planning and executing it and all that. But, Triple H, during the time where Vince was in and out and didn't have a lot of power and all that, you would see major shifts in the creative and things would get a lot better. I mean, the fact, the Bloodline storyline took the twists and turns that it did and all the stuff with Sami Zayn and all that, I think that was all Triple H. I don't think Vince would have let Sami Zayn become a prominent character in that story. There, you wouldn't have seen that match in Montreal with Roman and Sammy, and all that. And I do love the meme where they point out that Cody Rock's just doing to you what you did to Sammy last year. That's fun. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how much worse it gets and what lengths they go to try to definitely wipe out Vince's name. And if Brock's going to be a no-go, which it seems like they've gotten right on that, it's going to be interesting to see if anybody else is going to want to touch him. Is old Tony Khan going to want to whip out $1 billion and bring Lesnar in for 3 matches to wrestle Kenny Omega or something,
Well,
shit like that.
can we agree on this, that whether Vince McMahon is found guilty in a court of public opinion, just from what we've seen, you can all say that guilty or not, he is an incredibly demented, twisted pervert with power control issues.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could just look at the old storylines from back in the day, and he definitely he had something with every one of the divas. And also, let me just throw out, if you're erasing Brock Lesnar from history, let me just point out that Roman Reigns ended the streak.
Yeah, people have gotten on that bandwagon pretty quick, and I don't blame them.
Right.
Because Brock never should have ended it to start with. He had the least to gain. That's a whole other podcast. I'm not gonna go beating that dead horse again. But yeah, by all means, give it to Reigns, because that's how it should have played out to start with. Speaking of that, what I just mentioned about Brock and the potential to be signed by AEW, I say that half joking, but then again,
With where they're at now,
old Tony, he's teasing his bi-weekly huge major announcement, which most people are speculating is going to be the signing of Mercedes Moné, a.k.a. Sasha Banks. And, I mean, great for them, but me personally, seeing that he brought Paige out of retirement and it meant nothing, he managed to get Edge, and it's pretty much meant nothing as far as ratings, ticket sales, interesting stories. Does anybody on the screen right now really think that's going to move the needle or make a difference to have Sasha Banks appear in AEW?
No,
I almost feel like Sasha Banks has been out of the time when they could have struck. I mean, how long has she been gone from WWE now? 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she went to New Japan, which, I mean, raises her stock for Tony Khan, obviously. But in American fans' eyes, that doesn't mean anything, And of course, Naomi's left, went to TNA, and has now come back around since then. And all the while, so what did Sasha sit in the crowd? I think at one of the pay-per-views, was it All In England or All Out or all whatever. She was up in the crowd and nobody seemed to really care. So, um, I don't know. Some of my friends accuse me of hating on AEW, and I don't wish them ill. I'm disappointed. I was super excited. I went to Chicago. I went to the original All In. I seen it all come together. I was super psyched about it, and I was, watching it every week when it started, and it's just so disappointing now. Let's take. You got, Sting's on his way to his retirement. So, what do? We have him and Darby beat the makeshift team of Big Bill. What a name. Big Bill. And
Big
Ricky
Bill.
Starks for the tag titles so that they can conveniently and obviously, you can see it coming a mile away in the distance, so they can drop them to the Young Bucks. And the last thing Sting will ever do in a professional wrestling ring as a wrestler will be drop tag belts to the freaking... I'm sorry, they're not the Young Bucks anymore. They're Matthew and Nicholas Jackson with Vince McMahon pervert mustaches. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah, I'm like you. I was a huge AEW fan. So much so that I quit watching WWE because it felt so fresh at the start. I went to a show in Huntsville. It was I still think it was the most fun wrestling event I've been to. But I was also it got to a point where I enjoyed watching it every week. You had all these homegrown, all the homegrown talent like Sammy Guevara. You had Darby Allin. You had all these really cool personalities. And they had some pretty intriguing storylines. They were a little bit more edgy than WWE, but I kind of agree with you here. It's not going to move the needle much because I've seen what they've done with everybody else. Andrade just ended up back in WWE, and what did he do at AEW? He was there for a second and did nothing, and now he's back. And you have guys like Malachi Black, who's excellent. Really, really good to me, in my opinion. Had he stayed in WWE, I think he could have been a major star. Adam Cole, what's Adam Cole really done over there? Not really much. So I've just watched them sign these guys. I think they just signed Okada as well. And my point being, like you had brought up with New Japan, I'm an American fan, so I don't, I know the mainstream New Japan guys. I know Okada, you knew all those guys when they were over there. But then they come over here and they try and make some of these guys a big deal. And if you're not a diehard, you don't know who these people are, and they're making it seem like they're a big deal. When most people are like, "Who is this?"
Let me touch on that because Jim Cornette actually said something to that effect. That the Rock and Roll Express, when they were the most over tag team in the United States, with the formula of double team moves, great cohesion, Ricky Morton selling, hot tag to Robert, either get screwed over at the end or go home happy with the double drop kick win. When they went over to Japan, where people didn't know who they were and didn't understand that style, they didn't get over at all. So to your point, Tyler, you can be so great in the Orient, and even someone like Okada, who I do have great respect for. You've got to educate those casuals, the American audience that doesn't understand why this guy like Sahara O hit the most home runs in Japan. When we sent Hank Aaron over in the home run contest, it was all Hank Aaron. No one knew who Sahara O was. I feel that's the way with the Japanese, the Mexican wrestlers who come over to work on Tony Khan's product. That okay, you see a couple of flashy moves, and then what makes you stand out? Nothing. Okay, who's the next signing?
Yeah, from the beginning, and I'm not somebody that just blindly agrees with everything Cornette says, but one of the great points Cornette has made about AEW from the beginning, and I remember telling my wife when it first started, after we watched about 4 weeks of it, I was like, I enjoy watching PWG getting those DVDs twice a year, 3 times a year, and watching those shows 3 times a year. These matches are super exciting. I'm like, but if I'm watching these Young Buck matches every week, it's going to wear thin. There's going to have to be some stories somewhere. Mm-hmm. And he starts bringing in not just big name stars from Japan, but obscure indie people. If I'm a fan and I turn on AEW and I've been a WWE fan, I don't follow the indies. I'm not, just all dug into the indie wrestling. Why the hell is this announcer wearing a mask? Who is this Excalibur guy? Why does he have a mask on? Why does he talk like he's this longtime wrestler, and I've never heard of him. And guys like Orange Cassidy and different people who they just put out there, here they are with no explanation, but they act like you should know who they are. They allude to things like, I'm on Google going, what was he talking about? But I'm having to do homework to figure out who these people are because they're not bothering to tell me. Unless I want to go watch the YouTube show and watch these guys, to go do squash matches or whatever. But yeah, man, like he does these Forbidden Door pay-per-views with these like indie fan dream matches or big mega mart dream matches. But like, if I'm just an average wrestling fan, why am I going to pay $50 to see people who I don't know who they are, why they're wrestling each other? Why is this guy beating Bryan Danielson? I've never heard of this guy, but he just beat freaking Bryan Danielson, and I'm supposed to be okay with it. I mean, that's been the worst thing, but that's not the worst thing. To me, my biggest gripe with Tony Khan, because I got a real good buddy of mine who likes AEW, and he always bitches me. He's like, well, yeah, the storylines suck, but the matches are great. I'm like, I've seen 1 million great matches in my life. How many more do I need to see? I need to be motivated to watch them. And Tony Khan will get like a wild hair and do a really good story with somebody. My favorite example of this that I always tell, and I ain't found nobody that can dispute me yet. We'll see if anybody on the screen can. He told a great story with Wardlow and MJF. And then when he got to the end of their story, Wardlow, just like a toy in a toy box, just gets tossed to the side. We don't know what to do with him. So every bit of momentum we built and equity we built in Wardlow just got tossed aside. And to this day, it hasn't been capitalized on. MJF, the only real true star they built, the only heel in professional wrestling, they played around with that so much with his teased babyface turns just to screw with the fans, and then a full-blown babyface turn, the whole best friend story with Adam Cole. Was it entertaining? Yeah, but it went against everything you've learned about the MJF character. Where to me, you just hoard out the entire concept of the MJF character to where now he doesn't have any real heat. It's all a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're all in on it. He's not really he's our shitbag or whatever it is they call him. And it's like you've diminished all the momentum you built with him. You've diminished all that as well. And then you had CM Punk, the biggest return in professional wrestling in 9 years. The one guy that nobody could get, even Vince McMahon with all his money, could not get him back. You bring him back to wrestling and completely manage to squander that in the worst way possible. You drop the ball. You have one good angle with him and MJF, and then you completely drop the ball. And in the process, like a guy like me at one time, I was a fan of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I can't stand them now because of the way the whole brawl out thing played out, the way they handled it, and they wouldn't talk to him and all this kind of stuff. I fucking can't stand them guys. If they had Darby and Sting against the Young Bucks in my backyard, I'd close the shades and go sit on the other side of the house. I don't care to see it. And I just, it kills me. And it's not on the road to getting any better. Any of this stuff we just talked about. And it doesn't, until he has the self-awareness to go, you know what, I got too much on my plate. This ain't fantasy booking on the internet anymore. I'm not doing this on a freaking message board anymore. I need someone who knows what they're doing to come in and help. It's going to go the way of WCW eventually. I mean, nobody's funds are endless. Daddy's going to come along and be like, all right, you've had your fun. Let's move on.
And you guys know me, I'm a Cody crybaby. You know what I'm saying? So saying that, I remember watching a documentary with Cody Rhodes, American Nightmare. And he says on there, I will never speak about why I left AEW. I will not talk. I think there's a little part of that with the Young Bucks, with Kenny. I mean, I really do. And it was to the point. Dude, I don't care what anybody says. Cody's last promo to AEW was the best thing he ever did at AEW.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic promo. I mean, and it was over a ladder match. But it's like he said, I don't know if I'll ever have another opportunity to do this promo, so I'm going to do it now. Even though he knew he's going to WWE. But anyway, I mean, dude, AEW used to be, I mean, I remember, dude, in the chats, I mean, me and Tyler, I mean, and even you guys, man, we were excited about AEW. We were like, oh, this is going to be great. You know, we got and it's just dropped the ball. And I think, I mean, mainly it's on Tony. Tony doesn't step up. Tony doesn't do his job when you have wrestlers literally trying to kill each other in a locker room, and that's not handled properly. You got all
Yeah.
the. I mean, it's bullshit. And it sucks. I mean, you got Brian Danielson over there right now wasting his time. You got John Moxley, who I honestly think is like the only person besides MJF that fits in that kind of category, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he has potential, but I think if he had his way, he'd be happy to be off in Kentucky somewhere having a death match in
Yeah,
front of 40 people and be just as
dude, I
happy.
swear to God. Yeah.
It's
I
weird.
mean, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I remember like Dean Ambrose like being like this lunatic, and then you got John Moxley over there putting like shit in his head, like just stabbing himself, like trying to like kill himself in the ring, and I'm like, dude, holy shit, like, you don't fit WWE, but you fit this kind of shit.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, man.
Tony,
It's honestly crazy.
Tony Khan to me has become the Michael Bay of professional wrestling. Michael Bay in his movies can blow a ton of shit up and have a big body count and these explosive, my God, gunfights. But do I give a rat's ass about the characters that are doing it? No. And that's why more accomplished filmmakers go down the list. Oliver Stone, Clint Eastwood, take your pick. Do a good job building up those characters before we get to the big payoff, and then your heart and your mind is emotionally invested. Pro wrestling is the same. Tony Khan's biggest problem is cohesion and comprehension. And those have been lacking from day one, and the AEW apologists didn't want to hear that back in 2019. They don't want to hear it now. But even Dave Meltzer himself said, you look at these crowds they're averaging since the 1st of January, 2,100 to 2,300. You know what that is? It was what Gene talked about. That's late WCW 2000. That's the road they're on. And unfortunately, like you, I went to the first AEW show they did in Atlanta a month before the pandemic hit, February of 2020. Cody versus Wardlow, or excuse me, Brian Cage in the cage match. And the action was good. They looked major league with their production. Everything was great. Cody did the moonsault off the cage, gave us the big speech about where his daddy used to walk those streets in Atlanta. And we really thought this company, hey man, they're on to something. They've been around a little less than a year, coming in because it was going to be double or nothing going into May of 2019. And I don't know if they put on a better match than the Dustin and Cody from the original show of double or nothing for storytelling, violence that meant something, counters, moves, the afterbirth of that. I feel like whether they know it or not, they've been chasing that story since their inaugural event.
Yeah.
And I just have some bad news because I saw an interview like, I don't know, a day or two ago. Tony Khan says AEW is better than it's ever been. So
Yeah.
whether he actually believes that or not,
That's his lack of self-awareness. I think he really believes it. I really do. And the thing that, for the longest time, even though it was really obvious to anybody that watched it, everybody there was just like him. Just like, Tony's like, oh, everything's great. It's all sunshine and rainbows. This is just the land of make-believe. It's wonderful. And it was almost refreshing the night that Punk went out there in that press conference and was just like called everybody out on their bullshit. I loved it. It was. Okay. I mean, I'm obviously a CM Punk fan and always have been back to the Ring of Honor days. But like for me, I was like, man, I would be that guy. Like I would sit there and be like, this is a bunch of fucking whiny kids. Like this is ridiculous. Like you guys are feeding all this stuff to the dirt sheets, and then they're dragging him through the mud. And rather than just play their little games and, let them talk shit about him in the dirt sheets and then walk by each other and high five and act like everything's wonderful, he went out there and called them out to their face.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them knew how to handle it. And then go to All in England, and little Jack Perry goes and pops off and makes a freaking comment to him in that camera. And Punk goes up to him like a man and basically confronts him about it and apparently whipped his ass, however that played out. And then Tony Khan feared for his life because it's like, oh no, we don't want to be in a situation where people are going to confront people who have a problem. We want to just we go talk shit in our corner, and you go talk shit in your corner, and then it'll end up in the dirt sheets, and the fans can argue amongst themselves, but like we're not going to confront each other face to face. And so, I loved that. I thought it was great. It was the first crack in the armor of AEW where anybody pointed out publicly, like, hey, this ain't great. There's problems. There's a
Can
lot.
Can we say anything here?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
just to put a bow on that, CM Punk was their leading merch mover. CM Punk had the high ratings for Collision, a show to get created, whatnot, whatever. The first $1 million house in that company was built on him. Jungle Boy Jack Perry might be one of the original 4 pillars of AEW, but he means fuck all for their business and money going forward. So if you had to discipline Punk, and I get it because he wasn't innocent in the situation,
No.
the fact that Perry was just told to go away because whoever started what, you went on my program in London in front of that house and put the Crimea River. You did that, not CM Punk, and I felt he should have been reprimanded just as much, if not harder. And once he wasn't, and they got their way, and the Young Bucks did their little victory lap around Chicago. They're not running too many victory laps these days.
No. And if they are, nobody's seeing it. I mean, look at these goofs. I mean, but I mean, like that's the crazy thing about it is I get aggravated reading what fans put, and all the AEW fans were celebrating when he got fired and talking all their shit about him, but then looked at the nosedive all the metrics took when he left. Then CM Punk, they're like, oh, they'll never have him in WWE. Then he walks out at Survivor Series, and I haven't seen it unless The Rock broke the record here, the other night when he showed up in Birmingham or whatever. CM Punk got more views across social media than any other thing in WWE history. He had the top 3 selling merch items for WWE, and that's on top of The Rock and Roman Reigns and all these other mofos that you want to list. The guy that nobody gives a shit about, he's old and he gets hurt and all the shit that people say about him. Somebody likes him. Somebody's buying all that merch. Somebody's viewing all that
Cody
social
Rhodes
media
shirts
stuff.
suck, man. They're doing him dirty. Like his shirts suck. Like I don't want his dog on my chest. You know what I'm saying? Like no.
I gotta say, he
You want a Brandy T-shirt?
He manages to get his dog on everything. Like it's wild.
I mean, let me just chime in for AEW. It says a lot about AEW and what it is now. I mean, like I said, I was a massive fan at the beginning, but it says a lot about what it is now. That the best bit of TV that I think that they put on in the last few years was the Punk press conference where he just went nuclear on everybody, and that's what made me tune in the next week just to keep up. Like when their backstage drama is better than anything they put on TV. I mean, that's a sure sign that you have an issue right there. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, he just signs these people, and they're all very talented, and they were all good, and they all can be good, but he just has no idea how to utilize them. It's like he's signing it's like he's playing with his action figures, like when you're a kid. Like you're just you're getting all your favorite ones, and you can talk about all these dream matches, but none of these people have stories. None of them have anything. So, I mean, I'm more interested in all the drama with the Bucks and Omega and Jack Perry and CM Punk Tony Khan fearing for his life and all that. I mean, that's way better.
And what?
When I heard that he used to write Dynamite as fan fiction on message boards before he actually got into wrestling, I'm like, oh, this all makes so much sense. I get it now.
And one more understated part of that brawl out conference to me was CM Punk with Tony Khan right beside him, basically saying this guy had a chance to squash it, be a leader, and take care of it, and he didn't. He apologized because now I'm having to do it. Do you see anyone in WWE sitting next to Triple H admonishing him like that to his face? Not at all.
No.
You would never see that, I don't think.
No.
And then you fast forward to Tony Khan sitting in a press conference wearing a big fuzzy hat and big Elton John sunglasses as he's being asked about, did Kylie Ray get sexually assaulted by Chris Jericho? And he just keeps giving the same answer over and over and over again, and the crazy thing to me is He non-answered that question like 5 times throughout that press conference. 2 of the times in which he was dressed as ridiculous as I just described, and at no point did he ever say, no, Chris Jericho has never been accused of any sexual misconduct, nor has he been involved in any. All he would do is just deflect it and not answer it. He not once did he deny it, which tells a lot, in my opinion.
Yep.
But to do it while dressed like a goof, I mean, I at least would have been like, hey, let me take this hat off and stuff before I address this. But there's all these pictures of him sitting there looking like Humpty Hump without the rubber nose and answering sexual assault questions. Like,
I mean, they should just play Talk is Jericho, baby. Talk is Jericho.
And the thing is, Jericho could rape a girl on that table at the press conference. And if he told Tony, you're not firing me, Tony would be like, okay, Chris, all right, I'll just avoid the question.
You still get 3 more guests on Talk is Jericho, okay?
I want everybody to get along.
Just no negativity, okay? Everything's good. It's all great around here.
Then he got to go fire off a tweet about whatever WWE's doing too.
Oh my God!
Just advertise Ric Flair's energy drink, man. Just advertise Ric Flair.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because Tony Khan does have the funds, whether through his own or from his dad. But I think the big kicker is going to be if Turner doesn't re-up on TBS and TNT, where they're going to go, because then you're going to be Impact. And Impact has done a great job in their niche market where they are. But you become that. You can have all the money in the world. But I don't know if Tony Khan's going to now, like Gene had made a share to me, they're going to move to Tubi. But I don't know what streaming site AEW is going to go to or what network's going to have them, because you start looking at the live crowds for your television product and the ratings where you're getting beat by the Big Bang Theory reruns. It's not a good look.
No, they're going to have to go run those little PWG, buildings down in California. Nicholas and Matthew are going to have to start booking buildings for them that they can actually fill. Because can you imagine what the rent is on these buildings? You're putting $2,100, and I'm sure of that $2,100, half of that's probably paper too. That's probably half of that's freaking comps on top of it. But you mentioned TNA. Admittedly, I haven't watched TNA in years. I checked out about the time they brought the American Wolves in, and didn't do anything with them worth watching. And I really, really checked out whenever they became WCW Light, Hogan and Bischoff and all them guys come in. I quit watching it regularly. Then I heard they brought Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards in. I'm like, well, let's see what that's about. Then they weren't doing anything with them. And then I just kind of checked out altogether. And every now and then I'll watch a random match on YouTube if it tickles my fancy, but not often. But I was taking notice, as a lot of people have, that Scott D'Amore had done a lot to kind of get them, get the train back on the track somewhat, and then they just recently became TNA again, which I don't know what the relevance of that is really. We've been Impact, and we've been this and that, and been around the dial of TV channels. But he abruptly, at first they're saying he was fired last week. Then the story's making the rounds that he made an attempt to buy the company. Anthem turned him down and then released him, or he asked to be released after they turned down his offer to buy it. Either way, this guy that took over his spot is somebody who works for Anthem, has no wrestling experience whatsoever. Are we most likely going to undo everything Scott D'Amore did, and TNA is going to go right back down the shitter, or what do you guys think? Does it even matter at this point? Or is anybody even paying attention?
I think the biggest thing, really, and it's going back to the Royal Rumble, TNA has been working really well with WWE on bringing in some people, from their product to enter the Rumble. Jordan Grace. Dude, I've loved Jordan Grace since like 2017 when she was just independent.
Yeah.
And where she's at now, and when she came out in that Rumble, to me, personally, that was the biggest surprise for me for the Rumble. I don't understand why the situation happened where he left, because, what I was reading up on is there was no explanation, there was no reasoning. And then I read up on what you were saying, he was trying to buy the company. I'm kind of concerned to a degree on the relationship between TNA and WWE, and
Yeah.
even AEW, unless they're trying to go more AEW against WWE. Maybe they're trying to get away from the WWE narrative and push the AEW and TNA, and keep it in that same box. I don't know. I thought it was weird.
I mean, working with AEW did nothing. I mean, that was pretty lopsided in my opinion. It did
Yeah,
nothing for TNA the first time around, other than Kenny
absolutely.
Omega come and took their belt and came through and beat their guys. And they've come out looking a lot better. Even when Mickey James was in the Rumble, the times they've been featured, it's served them well, and they've had some swaps for Hall of Fame things and stuff like that. I mean, TNA at this point, if you ask me, and maybe Scott D'Amore might have had some thoughts of that when he was wanting to buy it, if they could become some almost a developmental type thing situation for WWE and work with them to help fund them and swap talent stuff would be their best case scenario. But I mean, why would you hitch your wagon to AEW and ride that down the hill?
Right.
This is
No,
the
no, I
last.
agree. Yeah.
It's not going to surprise me if you see Scott D'Amore announced either at NXT or on Triple H's staff come Mania
Yeah.
season. Not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd
their
love to
product
see it.
was, their product was great, and I thought it was definitely more of him trying to push the relationship with WWE.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because like I said, I was blown away when Jordan Grace came out. I was like, holy shit! Like, never
For
thought
like,
I would see her in the ring.
I give D'Amore a lot of credit for keeping them relevant with people like
Mhm.
Johnny Swinger and Mike Jackson and Moose.
Yeah,
That even though it's on, I believe, Access TV, they still have a niche on. I think they only do like 2 or 3 pay-per-views a year, but he's been in charge, I believe, for what, about 7 years now or 8? And I mean, the company didn't fold. And he had good working relationships with people in-house as well as with AEW and now WWE. And when I thought of TNA Impact over the last 6, 7 years, first thing I thought of was Scott D'Amore. That may be a good thing or a bad thing, but now the fact that he's gone, I just don't know if you're going to find somebody like you said, Gene. This guy's not a wrestling guy. D'Amore was there during what you would call the glory period with Team Canada, whatnot, all the way through a lot of this stuff, and now he's gone. I just don't know if they have much hope.
Yeah, I can't. At the times in the past where non-wrestling people have stepped in, like as Jeff Jarrett would go away and things like that, is always the darkest times where they almost died, and they always had to bring somebody back, like a Scott D'Amore or somebody, to try to dig them back out. And I just don't know how many more times. I mean, that company's come back from the dead more times than Jason Voorhees. Like, it's crazy that TNA still exists when you go back and look at their history and the ups and downs, and where they've had to settle for TV over the years, and do 7 days of TV tapings in a month and then not run again for 2.
Their
It's
video game for the Wii was one of the worst I've ever played. By the way,
yeah.
TNA had a game. I just loved having to hit up, down, left, right, BA to throw a punch.
That's a good point. Ziggler's got to be pissed that he gets there and he's starting to do something, and now Scott D'Amore's gone. Like he's like, well, damn it, I should go call Paul, see if we can mend some fences here. Go to NXT at least. So, I guess the last thing on the wrestling front before we talk a little comedy, because we are a main event comedy, and we don't want to just be all wrestling. Well, 2 more points. All right, one a little more lighthearted. I've said for years that pretty much everybody, almost everyone who's ever laced up a pair of wrestling boots has had a podcast. Mark Calloway now officially has the 6 Feet Under podcast where he does one-on-one with a guy every week. The Undertaker now has a podcast, so I think that covers it. I think officially now everyone has or has had a wrestling podcast. So I listened to the first episode. It was interesting. I look forward to checking him out. He comes off like a really good dude, and he's not, despite his character and the way he's played it all these years, he don't take it. I mean, it sounds weird to say he doesn't take it seriously. He does take it seriously, but I'm saying he gives a pretty good peek behind the curtain. He's pretty frank about the things that he does discuss. So overall, I think it'll be good. But it's just like, all right, Undertaker has a podcast that checks just about the next. I think Kane's all we got left, and we've covered everybody. We've got. You guys plan on checking that out? What are your thoughts? Or are you pretty much podcasted out, which is ironic for us to say as we're sitting here doing it. We added another one to the mix.
I'll say real quick, a lot of guys at work were asking me yesterday and Friday about the Undertaker podcast. So I knew that it was coming. I just didn't know the first episode had dropped. They said they already listened. So, he is a name that's going to move, even in the podcast world. I hate to see that it's not Dead Man Talking with Conrad Thompson like we thought we were going to get. But as far as podcasts out, there's just not enough time. If I try to listen to either one of Cornette's, let alone both, you get into Kurt Angle, Arn Anderson, Jeff Jarrett, Mick Foley, Taker, Jim Ross. I mean, you got to pick and choose, man. I didn't even go into Jake Roberts and DDP. Correct. I mean,
Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I will go away from one for about 3 months, saddle over to another, listen to 2 or 3, and then come back because I just don't know if there's a way to stay in the weekly rotation.
That's how I've kind of gotten, and it gets to a point where you kind of understand a guy's views on most things where you kind of like, you see the topic and you're like, I pretty much know where he's going to fall on that. I don't need to listen to that one. So yeah, I totally get that. Cornette's, I'm to the point where I just watch the clips on YouTube because I can't sift through the hours and hours of them talking about everything week in and week out.
I probably, I'm kind of with y'all. There's so much out there. It's hard to prioritize which ones you want to listen to. Admittedly, I probably watch Cornette YouTube clips mostly because it's hilarious, not so much for the content, just because you never know what Jim's going to say. So, and I love when he gets to talking about Tony Khan and AEW because it's usually cool. I know
and the artwork's great too. I mean, that's what sucks me in a lot of times. Like I'll be scrolling through, like, oh god, I got to see what this one is. That artwork's hilarious, So I just hate that. I always say that if he was still alive, I think my favorite podcast to struggle to listen to would be the Andre the Giant podcast with Conrad Thompson every week because I'm sure Conrad would have got him to do one by now if Andre was still with us, and boy, wouldn't that have been a struggle to get through. But so this question is mostly going to be for Shane. I'm sure you guys have heard of this guy, but I'm sure you don't know a whole lot about him. But star of the 80s, WWF star of the 80s, Billy Jack Haynes has been arrested for apparently murdering his wife in Portland, Oregon. My response to that when my buddy sent that to me, my exact response was, it's shocking, but I'm not shocked. And I feel like that kind of sums that up to a degree because it's shocking. It's a shocking thing to happen. But then again, if you've watched any of these shoot interviews that Feinstein and some of these guys have done with him over the years, or, read about his personal life, Billy Jack Haynes is an odd duck, to say the least.
A very odd ball, and seemed to have a lot of intensity, a little bit of a short fuse in the ring. I remember that 86, 87 run WWF, and you sometimes wonder where the character ends and the real person begins. And unfortunately, they didn't document it back then. How many concussions did Billy Jack Haynes have wrestling for Don Owens in Portland and being on the road with WWF? But I feel like, yes, there's still stuff in today, but when you start getting into drugs and, taking your own life via suicide or murdering your partner, that seems to be from a bygone era for a lot of guys that were in that particular realm.
It's sad. There's not a lot to say about it. It's like I say, it's a shocking thing to happen. You hate to hear it, and people find a way to make it a black eye on the entire business, where it's just one dude that happened to be a wrestler. That's what he did for a living, but it's not a indictment on the entire business. But right now, while Vince McMahon's out there bringing shame to the entire industry, you didn't need another murderer in the mix, but here we are. So thanks, Billy Jack. Good job, buddy. Anyway,
Billy Jack.
And me and Bob Anderson had a good bit coming up on an OWF episode that we had to cut. It involved a video of Billy Jack Haynes. He's like, we can't run that now. And I was like, that son of a bitch. Like, he's ruining our content. And RIP his wife, by the way. But anyway. Okay, so let's talk. This is the Main Event Comedy Podcast. Let's talk about a couple of comedy topics here so that we cover all our bases. So I don't know how. I guess, we'll kind of ask before we dive into the subject, like, how many of you guys are pretty familiar with Shane Gillis? A little bit. Yeah, Tyler? Yay, nay, no. Knowles?
Sorry.
So
when I heard the SNL thing, that's the first time I heard his name. I'm sorry.
Wow. See, that's wild. Like, so he's a pretty big comic. Like, so a few years back, or I guess around the pandemic times, he had gotten hired to be on Saturday Night Live as a regular. Now, he's a club comic. He'd been around for a little bit. He was doing a lot of podcasts. Still does a lot of podcasts. He's on Kill Tony quite frequently. But once he got hired to be on Saturday Night Live, before he ever appeared on screen, somebody dug up some audio from a podcast where he made like a racist joke towards Asians and made a couple of homophobic jokes. And Saturday Night Live immediately fired him before he ever even started. Like, he called his parents like, hey, I got hired for Saturday Night Live, got on a train, had no phone service. And by the time he took the train 2 hours to where he was going to get home, he had already lost the job. He had already lost the job. And
he never get on stage.
No, never got on stage. Never went to the show. He instead of going on the apology tour like his management told him he needed to do, he's like, no, I'm not doing that. He did some podcasts saying like, look, it was a joke. It's, comedians. We make jokes. I'm not apologizing. I'm sorry if anybody got offended. I'm sorry y'all dug up random podcast audio from 2 years ago to get me fired. So he never really apologized. He didn't change his act. He still did the comedy that he does, still goes on podcasts all the time. He goes and gets shithouse drunk on Kill Tony and, makes fun of people and makes jokes. But he's gotten huge. He put out a YouTube special that got a couple million views, which led to getting a Netflix special, which was like their number one viewed. I don't know if it was number one viewed comedy or it was number one viewed period, but it was number one for several weeks. He jumped right from doing clubs to he kind of skipped over, like doing large theaters now. And he does a lot of Kreischer's, stadium blowouts and shit like that. But now Saturday Night Live, who fired him, now want him to host. And so he goes from being canceled to, being one of the bigger comedians out there right now, and now being invited to host Saturday Night Live. And so I guess my point of all this is kind of, what is y'all's opinion of the fact that, here in the past 2 or 3 years, a lot of comedians are really uptight about, we can't say this, we can't say that. You got to be careful because there's topics you can't joke about. You can get canceled, and once you get canceled, you're just, you're blackballed, you're out. And I mean, Shane Gillis kind of proves that you just keep doing what you do, you can overcome it and be successful and go back to the show that fired you. Do you think we're moving past the cancel culture in comedy, or do you think it was never a real thing, or just kind of what are you guys' thoughts on just that in general, as it pertains not just to Shane Gillis, but just comedy in general? And is it something, I know this doesn't apply to Tyler, but I mean, I'm interested in hearing his take on all this once we get going. Is it something you guys think about when you're writing material is, okay, this is the venue I'm going to be in. How's that going to be received? Maybe I shouldn't say that.
I mean, it has to. I mean, I did a podcast a couple nights ago and was kind of asked almost close to the same question. Dude, it's so hard to write a joke, to tell a joke, because in the back of your mind, you can call me crazy. You go, is he going to offend this person? Is he going to offend this person? Is he going to offend? And to a degree, I mean, dude, I have a joke in the vault right now that, like, when I started comedy, I wrote it, and I'm terrified to bring it back just a little bit because of how it is today. Like, you can't joke about stuff, and I think there's a line for everything. You know what I mean? I think there's definitely a line, but I guess for me, I guess the line for me could be here, but it's more like right here for other people. I don't know. It's definitely hard, I think, because you can make a joke about someone that's not like you are when you're on stage, and people can immediately go, "Oh, it's because no, it's just a joke,"
Yeah.
you know. Um, with this situation with SNL, and I'm a big fan of SNL. I think they're retracting on what they did because that guy never stood foot on that stage, like you were saying, and people literally had to dig up what he said to even have SNL look at it and go, oh shit. Um, I need to be more familiarized with his comedy
And
because I know.
the thing of it was some obscure podcast. So it's like
Mhm.
you guys are comedians and you don't know who Shane Gillis is. He's a pretty well known comedian. So I'm sure you had no idea about this obscure, shitty podcast that he did, and he was drunk at 2 in the morning or something and made this off color joke. So, like, the general public would have had no idea that he ever made that joke. They would have had no idea that he'd ever been on that podcast. Most folks that would have watched SNL would have never even known that he was particularly a stand up comedian. But yet, because somebody dug it up and pointed it out, they're like, oh shit, we better fire him. To me, that's just crazy because, like, if podcast existed, for the last 30 years, you know how many people would have never got a shot if you would have dug up things in their. You imagine the things that got said in the back of the Comedy Store amongst, like, all those, the Pryors and Kennisons and all that. I mean, the stuff they said publicly for one thing, but good Lord, the stuff they said at 2 in the morning that, never got recorded. If you could have dug up stuff like that, there's comedians we never would have heard of because they never would have made it to the stage. Even back in the day, not to mention the new PC uptight generation we're in now. That's wild to me that at all times, like, in theory, if one of you said something that people could deem offensive on this podcast right now that a handful of people are currently watching, I don't know how many people will download it, how many people will see it and hear it in the days to come. But if Wes got hired for SNL or some other show and he's just about getting ready to start work and somebody's like, oh, hey, I got this clip of this Main Event Comedy podcast, or he made this joke about a Hispanic person, and they're like, oh shit, how many people saw it? Well, it was a couple of hundred people over time. Whew, all right, we can't have that, and now you've lost an opportunity over a joke that you made on a podcast that you knew not that many people were going to see or hear anyway. So you looked at it as, small risks, small reward, and now it's cost you a career opportunity. That's crazy. It's unfair. But then there's other people that say, well, then you should always be on your guard and never say anything that could come back and bite you in the head. You should live your life like you're always being recorded. And maybe there's something to be said for that too. But then I also don't understand why jokes are being run through such filters now. Like, it used to be that a joke was a joke and people understood that. But it's like now there's all these groups, and I'm not making this into a whole big thing on race or sexuality or any of that, but there are groups now that you and no one else can joke about. They're just off limits. You just can't make a joke about them. And they want to be treated equal, but they can't be joked about, which to me, if people can't joke about you and you're off limits, that's inequality in and of itself, which is hypocritical. Shane, what's your thoughts?
As far as writing, I don't know if you remember this, the last comedy show we did together at Atomic Johnny's over 3 weeks ago. I remember telling you I got a couple of what I think edgy jokes going out there, and one was about the response to Nick Saban's retirement, and one was about JFK. And I was like, I'm just going to float these out here and just see. Now, my mindset may change if one day I'm headlining 10,000 seat, arenas or 5,000 seat amphitheaters. But right now, and I think it'll stay the same because a lot of people that I talk to, and of course, this isn't everybody, but they're looking for a little bit more push the envelope. They are tired of cancel culture and they want to hear things like in their verbiage. If I go to a comedy show, a comedy club, or a bar, I expect to hear something a little edgy that pushes the envelope that I'm not going to hear maybe so much mainstream where the belts are tightened and the harnesses are put on. So I'm not saying my entire act is going to become that, but when I was writing stuff for that last show, I put those out there. I didn't know what the response was going to be. And to my knowledge, they're still going to have me back with you guys coming up later this month. So luckily, it didn't cost us anything. But I'm not afraid to push the envelope a little bit and do something that may be deemed offensive because at the end of the act, no matter what, I'm going to make fun of myself and self deprecating far more than I am like any one individual or group of people.
Yeah.
I'm in on the joke. So
I will say this, and a lot of people that know me may think this sounds strange coming from me, but I do think that we had reached a point to where it was too much to where people could just say anything and everything. I'm not even saying that's bad, but I'm saying we got so out there in the 2000s, late 90s and 2000s to where nothing really was shocking anymore. Nothing was edgy because people just said anything, like any and everything, just the dirtiest, filthiest, most offensive things you could say just for the sake of saying them. And then it kind of got to be, well, the most shocking thing you could do is just go up there and be funny and not really be vulgar because everything's getting said. So then it was like, all right, well, maybe we do need to rein some things in just to make it shocking again. But I don't like the way we went about it and the reasons we went about it. I don't think that's ideal. But I do think at one point it got to where there was nothing really shocking because what could you say? I mean, some of the stuff that comedians were saying up there, what could you say that could be any more offensive than what was being said? But I think everything, you've got to look at everything through the lens of what the intent was a lot of times too. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you may say some things that are shocking, but if they look at the whole of everything you talk about, you can see that you're not being malicious towards any one group of people, or there's not ill intent. Because, like you say, you give it to yourself equally, and I try to do the same. And I know Wes, you try to do the same as well. But it does add another degree of difficulty, when you're writing things and you think about who's going to be there, and then you think, all right, well, this group of people that's normally there, I know they're not going to be offended. But what if there's somebody there who's not normally there? How are they going to take it? And then what if they go complain to the bar? Is the bar not going us back, or they not going to want me back? Or it goes beyond just. In an ideal world, when you're writing comedy, it should just be: is this funny? Will other people find this funny? Great. Is it going to hurt anybody? I mean, I don't think that you need to go up there and say things that, okay, it's funny, but it's really, really hurtful or offensive to somebody. But if it's just everybody gets their turn, so be it. But I don't know. Like, I'm hoping that it's a sign that we're moving in a direction of it's not going to matter, because there's so many people that just watch things to see what offends them so they can complain about it. They watch movies they don't like. They listen to comedians they don't care about or like, podcasts, just so they can pick out all the things that offends them or could potentially be offensive to someone else. A lot of times it's not even something that offends them. It's just this could be offensive to this group of people, so now I don't think it should be said. And that mentality just drives me nuts. Like, all this of being offended for other people who aren't offended. Like, there's so many, if you look on social media, and especially like during a lot of like during the times of you know, um, when like racial tensions were high and all the George Floyd stuff and all that, I saw more white people online being offended on behalf of black people who weren't offended by things. And it's just like, shut up. I mean, people can speak for themselves. Like, why are you on here making a case for people who aren't upset?
To your point, I don't know how many of you have seen the new Dave Chappelle special that debuted early in 2024 on Netflix. And I was scrolling through social media, and there's Rolling Stone publication, and their review. And Gene, this is so spot on, I think, to what you're saying. Rolling Stone's review of the special said, in this special, Dave Chappelle shows his trademark wittiness and razor sharp humor, dot, 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 but he can't let the transgender thing go. The first comment that I see on that post is, Dear Rolling Stone, stop trying to speak for all of us. Sincerely, a transgender who loved the special.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you go back to the closer, I mean, yes, he made some jokes about transgender people, but if you listen to the story he tells about the transgender comedian that he was friends with,
Mm-hmm.
that he gave opportunities to, and pointed out that, he was their friend, he took them in, he gave them, opportunities to perform and all this, and then their community lashed out at them and potentially drove them to suicide. It's like, in the end, he shows you that he's not a bad person. He doesn't hate these people. He's just making jokes about them. He don't hate all white people, but he makes jokes about them because that's what he does. And I mean, there's a lot of people that hate his last couple specials. I enjoyed them. I've watched both of them multiple times. Dave Chappelle is one of my top 5 favorite comedians of all time. And if there was one comedian that I haven't met yet, that if you said, like, what's the one comedian you want to meet you haven't met, it would be Dave Chappelle, hands down. I wouldn't think twice about it. I've had the chance to meet Dave Attell and Doug Stanhope and several people that I really look up to, but Dave Chappelle would be one I would love to meet. And if he called me a fat honky or some shit, I would think it was hilarious. I wouldn't be offended. I wouldn't go write a goddamn article about it or anything. So but yeah, you're right. That's a perfect example. Tyler, I mean, you're not a comedian, but I'm sure you partake in some comedy. What's your take on this sort of thing as a fan of comedy?
Yeah, I mean, I get your struggle of trying to figure out, where the line is, and I know it can probably vary between audiences. I mean, I went to, like I said, I know like a lot of the I know a lot of the mainline comedians. I went to a Kevin Hart show um, at in Birmingham like a few years ago. It wasn't Kevin Hart that made the joke; it was one of his openers, and I don't know who they were, but they made a joke that it kind of shocked me because it was something like, because I'm not at comedy shows all the time,
Yeah.
so I was like, wow, I didn't realize you can joke about that like in the current environment, because that's really all I see all the time. I'm not offended by it, but I'm like, wow, I don't. I can't believe he would, they would say that, I don't know who that would have offended or whatever. But now, after that show, from a comedy perspective, I've been to several more comedy shows. Now I just kind of expect that at a comedy show. And like you said, it's comedy. It's not, it's to get a reaction. It's a joke. It's not really attacking anybody. I mean, a lot of times, like, they're making fun of themselves, like you said at the end. Um, so it's really, I can understand y'all struggle though of trying to like figure out in this current environment where everything, people go through your old tweets, people try and find clips when you were 13 years old and what you said, and try and hold it against you now and cost you your job and everything. I can only imagine the struggle that you would have to kind of go through to figure out what jokes are appropriate for your current audience and which ones maybe you might have to hold back for a different audience or anything like that. But yeah, a few things I've learned though at comedy shows is that I've learned to expect everything and never sit up front because you're going to be targeted.
Smart man. Smart man. It's kind of shocking to me too. I just started realizing this a while back, is the power that the media and society has on you that you don't realize. It's like, I'm a 46-year-old dude. Like, I started watching comedy with, Bill Cosby up through Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, George Carlin, and the entire gamut. And I've listened to old Lenny Bruce stuff and all that, Sam Kinison, and nothing offends me. I mean, even if it goes against something I believe in, everybody has a right to say whatever they want to say. And I have the right to not agree with it. And I have the right to be offended. Now, I didn't know that somewhere along the line in this country, certain people have a right to never have to be offended. They apparently have their right to not be offended supersedes your right to freedom of speech, because your right to say something does not outweigh their right, apparently, to not have to hear anything they don't want to hear that they disagree with. But with all the stuff that's gone on in recent years, I go back and watch old comedy shows, and not even like 80s stuff. I'm talking about stuff from like the late 90s. And I hear certain words and I'm shocked for a brief moment. It's kind of jarring. And I'm like, what am I like? I'm not offended by that. I've heard that word my entire life, but I've become so trained by the media and by current society that you're not supposed to say that now I'm shocked by something that I used to listen to every day when I was in my teens and 20s. And now as a 40-something-year-old, it's like jars me for a minute. I'm like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Then I'm like, what am I doing? What the hell?
It kind of goes back to our wrestling conversation. Like, if I saw the Attitude Era and the stuff that happened then, now, I would be shocked. Even though I grew up watching that, it doesn't offend me. But like, it's just the current environment we live in.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff happens now, I'm going to be like, whoa, there's going to be some backlash over that. Now, but back then it was just routine.
If the Bloodline were going to chop off Cody Rhodes' penis next week, we'd all be like, what? But meanwhile, they tried to do that to Val Venus, and, it didn't phase us.
Hello, ladies.
Yeah. When you start thinking about some of the Attitude Era stuff happening now, you really realize, how tastes change and what's acceptable changes and everything. I had one more topic I was going to talk about. I'm going to push that off to next week because I didn't intend for us to go nearly 2 hours. I don't know if anybody's still listening to this, be it live or otherwise. If you are, thank you. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope it was an interesting conversation. Thank you guys for coming on. I've had fun, and we're going to keep doing these every Sunday night, with everybody that can come, and we'll have different topics lined up each week, wrestling, comedy, otherwise. So, if you guys have topics you want to talk about, let me know ahead of time and we'll get them on the agenda. And is there anything else you guys want to say before we wrap it up?
I've just enjoyed being on the show with y'all. I mean, it was a good time. Thank you, Wes, for inviting me. I hope to be back on some future shows too. I'd be totally open to that.
Absolutely. We love to have you. And it's fun. Like, I think it brings a different perspective because I know, like, me and Shane have both been involved in wrestling. Wes is a fan. And then we're all involved in comedy. And I think sometimes in these podcasts, when you have just people inside the bubble, be it wrestling or comedy or whatever the topic is you're talking about, you sometimes lose perspective of how it's viewed by fans who aren't usually as pessimistic or as cynical as people who have been involved with it. And so I'm always eager to hear how, fans are seeing it, because I know a lot of times you lose sight of that, and you think that everybody thinks exactly like the vocal minority that you see on Twitter and you see on Facebook, the ones that are outraged. And just like you, for everybody who was just furious and, shaking their fist and they were the quote unquote Cody crybabies, there's some Roman Reigns fans that are out there like, hey, screw Cody, I don't care,
And we did that tonight. I mean, we advertised the return of Main Event Comedy in a podcast, and everybody's ready for hashtag We Want Delbert. Tyler comes in. We will see if it gets trending. We want Delbert for next Sunday.
we inserted Tyler in Delbert's spot, and we'll see if there's an outrage come tomorrow. I hope there is, because then we can build up a Tyler and Delbert feud, which Tyler has no idea what he'd be in for then. If
No, he don't. No, no. It's not good, man. I mean, it's not good.
Well, I want to remind everybody before we go, we will be returning Saturday, February 24th to Atomic Johnny's, our next main event comedy show there. Show's going to start at 8 p.m. Of course, you're going to have myself, Shane Knowles, Wes Sears, Delbert Jenkins. But joining us, we're going to have Chef J Dubs, who's been in the comments tonight, a funny comedian from down around Prattville. Dude is out there killing it. He's burning up the roads. He was in Florida last night. He's opening for, bands like the Velcro Pygmies and these big shows. And he's out there doing mics 2 or 3 nights a week. He's out there making things happen. And I'm excited to have him on our show and let you guys see what he's all about. And the hilarious James Etchison. Folks, if you haven't seen James, if you haven't checked him out online, if you haven't seen him in the show, come to this show. James is one of the funniest dudes that we've come across since we've been doing this. Love that guy. I'm excited that he's coming back, and it's going to be a really good show. We're going to change things up a little bit this time to maybe kind of work with everybody. We're going to have maybe 3 comedians go up, do a little break, give everybody a chance to go up to the bar, get something to drink, go outside and smoke, go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do. And then we're going to try to settle it back down for the second half and then finish out with the rest of the comedians. See if maybe that works out better for everybody, because I know it's a bar show. People want to be able to go back and forth to the bar. They need to go out and smoke. They need to move around a little bit. So it's not necessarily conducive to just boom, we start the show and we run straight through. So we talked to Cheyenne from Atomic Johnny's, and she had suggested that. I thought that was a great idea. So we're going to try that out this time. See what everybody thinks. But man, I'm psyched about that show. How about y'all?
Same, and if we're going to take an intermission, we got to start getting merch to move like Action Mike Jackson.
Got that right. We're going to have the split the pot raffle and
win a date with Delbert raffle.
There you go. Get that going and see if somebody will quote some scripture for us. And yeah, we're gonna take this wrestling gimmick to the next level on these comedy shows. If we're going to bring the 2 worlds together, that is a key ingredient we're missing. A special send the main event boys to Charlotte intermission fundraiser. More on that later. Well, all right, guys. I think 2 hours is about our limit. I think we've covered everything. There you see Wes drinking a Bud Light there. Shane Gillis is actually a spokesman for Bud Light now, so it's not just for gay folks anymore. But Wes, we still support you no matter what.
Thank you so much.
I like how calm that was said. It's not just for gay folks.
And that, Tyler, is how you sneak in things that you're not supposed to say.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds so subdued, and you're like, "What did he say? Was that offensive? I think I'm mad."
Beautifully done.
And then they're like, "Well, no, he didn't say it. He didn't say it in a mean way. I think it's okay. We don't know. He may be gay. We're not sure. So that didn't happen. Don't play it back. Just let it go. Don't rewind it. Don't listen to it. Nothing offensive was said. And Chef J Dubs is saying that he is coming out to Real American at Atomic Johnny. So that should be exciting. That'll be a good introduction to y'all for Chef J Dubs. And speaking of J Dubs, speaking of our friend David Lynham, they're a part of Comedy Break-In. They got a couple of open mics going on in Birmingham every Monday night. They're at Zydeco at 6:30 p.m. Every Thursday night, they're at Ghost Train Brewing in Birmingham. I plan on being at Ghost Train this Thursday. I've been there most Thursdays for the last few weeks. I couldn't go last Thursday because I was dead and dying. Delbert came out and did one week before last. So plan on hitting up Ghost Train again. But if you're a fan of comedy, if you're a comedian looking for a mic to get up, hit up David Lynham. Go to the Comedy Break-In here on Facebook. Sign up and go there. Some of the best comedians throughout Birmingham and Huntsville are hitting up those mics, and I'm getting stage time. I'm getting to network with some people, meet some new people, getting to go up there and find people to come do some main event comedy shows with us over here in Gadsden. So, and hopefully greasing the wheels to get us over there on some Birmingham shows, getting us out there. So appreciate everybody listening, and look for us again next Sunday night right here at 9:30 p.m. for another live episode of the Main Event Comedy Podcast.